On the morning of May 30th, 2025, all eyes were on a steel mill in Pittsburgh. Cameras rolled as President Donald Trump took the stage, a confident smile on his face. Then came the announcement that would send ripples across industries far beyond metals. Tariffs on steel and aluminum were going from 25% to a staggering 50%. The crowd of steelworkers erupted in applause. For most Americans, it sounded like another bold move to protect U.S. manufacturing. But in a quiet office hundreds of miles away, Coca-Cola CEO James Quincy froze in his chair. This wasn't just a number on a political scoreboard. It was a direct hit to the lifeblood of his company. Why? Because every year Coca-Cola sells billions of cans in the U.S., and those cans are made of aluminum. With a single sentence, the cost of producing those cans had just been thrown into chaos. It's easy to think of tariffs as something that mainly affects factories, shipping ports, and commodity traders. But here, in the middle of America's favorite soft drink business, Trump's announcement landed like an earthquake. And this was only the beginning of the storm. Finding enough aluminum for billions of Coke cans each year is like keeping fuel flowing to a massive fleet of trucks. It can't stop for even a day. But with the 50% tariff in place, every traditional source suddenly became a problem. Canada, Coca-Cola's biggest aluminum supplier, was now subject to the same heavy tariff. Brazil, the second largest source, might seem like the logical backup. But Trump had already hinted he was looking closely at Brazilian trade practices. That raised fears that Brazil could be next on the tariff list. Other options, like sourcing from Gulf countries, were technically possible, but the logistics were a nightmare. Shipping costs would skyrocket, and long delivery times would mean higher risks for supply delays. Some people suggested, why not just switch to glass or plastic bottles? But for Coca-Cola, cans aren't just packaging. They're a core part of the U.S. soda experience. Plastic brings environmental backlash, glass is fragile and expensive to transport, and neither can fully replace the convenience and shelf life of aluminum cans. In short, no matter which direction Coca-Cola turned, they ran into a wall. The supply chain that had been fine-tuned for decades was now like a puzzle with missing pieces, and every piece that was left had suddenly doubled in cost. For Coca-Cola, the math was brutal. A 50% tariff on aluminum could add 3 to 4 cents to the cost of each can. That might sound small, but across billions of cans sold in the U.S., it's a tidal wave of extra expense. At the retail level, that could mean a 10 to 15% price hike for customers, a jump big enough to spark outrage. The company faced two bad options: pass the costs to consumers and risk losing loyal customers who decide soda has become too expensive. Absorb the costs and watch profit margins shrink, which could hurt the company's ability to invest, advertise, and compete. In some regions, grocery chains had already begun nudging up prices quietly, maybe 50 cents more for a 12-pack. But rolling out a nationwide price increase would make headlines, potentially damaging Coca-Cola's image as an affordable everyday drink. James Quincy knew the brand couldn't afford to make Coke feel like a luxury item. Yet every week the company delayed raising prices meant millions lost. It was a slow bleed with no painless fix, and the clock was ticking. Coca-Cola wasn't alone in this fight. Pepsi and other beverage companies face the exact same problem, since they also rely heavily on imported aluminum. This meant the pain wasn't limited to one brand. The entire soft drink industry was staring down the barrel of higher costs, potential shortages, and angry customers. In Washington, talk began of a joint lobbying push. Agriculture and food producers, already struggling under their own set of tariffs, from dairy export losses to produce import restrictions, were considering teaming up with beverage giants to pressure the White House. The message would be simple. These trade policies aren't just hitting factories, they're hitting grocery store shelves. Some senators, especially from soda-loving states like Kansas and Iowa, quietly warned that if cans of Coke and Pepsi started disappearing or doubling in price, the backlash would be fierce. But Trump's base was split. On one side, domestic metal producers and America First supporters cheered the tariffs. On the other, everyday voters, many of whom drink soda daily, didn't want to pay more for a Coke with their lunch. It was becoming clear. This wasn't just an economic issue anymore, it was turning into a political balancing act, with the cost of a can of soda becoming part of the national conversation. Even if Trump's plan worked and domestic aluminum production ramped up, it wouldn't happen overnight. Industry experts estimated it would take 2 to 3 years, and billions of dollars in new facilities, before the U.S. could meet enough of its own demand. That meant Coca-Cola could be stuck living with these 50% tariffs well into 2028 or 2029. Some in Washington speculated that Trump's 50% figure might just be a negotiation tactic, with the real goal of settling around 30 to 35%. But for now, the administration showed no signs of backing down. Trump's message was clear. The steelmakers in Pittsburgh are my comrades. I'm not lowering the 50%. Faced with uncertainty, Coca-Cola began looking beyond America's borders for relief. The company launched aggressive growth pushes in Latin America and Asia Pacific, aiming to offset shrinking U.S. profits with gains abroad. But no foreign market could fully replace the revenue from home turf. At the heart of it all was a cultural truth. In the U.S., a cold can of Coke with a burger isn't just a drink, it's part of everyday life. If tariffs turned that into a luxury, both Coca-Cola and the American consumer would lose. And while the trade war might boost some parts of the metal industry, it was also proving that in a global economy, one political move can send shockwaves through the most unexpected places, even a can of soda.